Hi guys, before we get into this video, I just want to introduce it because I released it on my other channel, Heartspace, first, and I decided to also release it here on Simplysoccer because I think it's an incredibly important lesson that not only applies to the things I'm teaching over in Heartspace, but this will also apply to your game in football. Now, one thing I want to make sure you're doing while you're watching this is you are paying close attention. If you're kind of watching this in the background and you're not really absorbing the information, it isn't going to really be helpful for you. This is going to be going over how to develop permanent skills, whether it's for soccer or anything else. You can use this system for your game, for certain skills within football, and I give a few examples in the video. You can use this for other things you're trying to learn. But the ability to learn skills, things that are just going to aid you in your life, building permanent skills is going to really change the game for you, not only in football, but in many other walks in life. And this system is the most efficient and most effective that I've ever found. And if you're a long time subscriber to this channel, you know I say all the time using proven systems to improve your game, to improve your life, instead of just winging it and just fumbling around in the dark. So I'm presenting that information to you in this video. And one last thing I want to leave you off with is I am spending a lot more time on my other channel, Heartspace, right now. I think a lot of the things we're going over there are really important, especially with what's going on in the world right now. So if you are interested in other topics like self-development, spirituality, empowerment, really learning what you are truly capable of, tapping into your potential, I ask you and implore you and invite you to join me over on Heartspace as well. I will link to the channel down below so you can go check it out. And if you like what you see there, subscribe, because we're trying to release a video every single day over there. Now, that being said, let's get into this lesson. Again, I already released this in Heartspace, but I know I want more people to see it who are on this channel, because it will not only apply to self-development in other areas, but it will also apply to your game as a footballer. And I would really encourage you to apply this to different skills that you're working on in football. So without further ado, enjoy, and let me know what you think in the comments or any questions that you have. Take care. How to build permanent skills. Very short, simple, and sweet title in this video. And honestly, I believe this is one of the most important lessons I can give you. This is something my mentor reiterates time and time again, and something we come back to time and time again, because this really, in my eyes, is one of the most important lessons, and that you can not only learn, but that you can continually revisit to continue to gain more mastery over. And the more you can master the idea I'm going to be going over for you in this video, the more you come back to this, the more notes you take, the more you practice this, the better your life's just going to get, the more you're going to develop permanent skills that are going to help you in multiple different areas of your life. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. This is going to be a big one. Get a pen and paper out or something to take notes on, because it's going to be very important that you don't just passively watch this in one ear, out the other. But if you take some notes, really pay attention here, you're going to learn a lot, and it's going to really help you moving forward. That's coming up next. All right, guys, yes, before we start, this is Heartspace. My name is Dave, and on this channel, we release videos every single day to help you live life more in your way. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button and bell icon for more lessons like this. Now, like I already said, I believe this to be one of the most important lessons that I can teach you. And so this video might be a bit longer because I'm going to really go in depth, or as in depth as I can go in this video. But I'm going to be giving you something that can be a thing you can use time and time again for the rest of your life. What I'm going to be teaching you is something that works every single time for every single person. It's something that successful people know and understand and use to become successful, to develop the skills they need to be successful, to develop what they need to live their dreams, to live the life that they want to live on their terms, which is one of the goals of this channel. And so it's something I want to share with you. And again, I said my mentor is someone who reiterates this whenever he teaches us new things. When he teaches me new things, he reiterates going back to this lesson so that the new things he's teaching us, the new skills he's introducing us to, we can develop them permanently instead of just learning a little bit about it and then forgetting about it. This process will help you to remember, to permanently, subconsciously learn skills so that it becomes way more effortless. So let's get into it first and foremost. So the first thing to understand is there are 4 stages to developing permanent skills. 4 things you need to understand, and it's not just understanding these 4 things, it's applying them and understanding which stage you are in. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4, and in every single case, in every single scenario, when you're beginning something new, you're starting at stage 1. No one is born starting at stage 4 or 3 in anything. You're really starting at stage 1 no matter what it is. Whether the skill you want to learn is how to make money, whether the skill you want to learn is how to learn more effectively, which is a great thing, by the way, to apply this to. That is a skill. How to learn effectively, how to pay attention, how to focus would be a great thing to apply this to. In fact, it's something my mentor, again, as I keep mentioning, has told us to practice as an incredible fundamental skill that's just going to help you in so many different facets in life. And so everyone's starting off at this first stage, which I'm just going to give you right away, which is called unconscious incompetence. So I'll write that down. Okay, and yeah, that looks weird just because this is a very shaky board. It's very precariously perched. So my handwriting when I'm writing things on this might be a little unneat, so just that's unconscious incompetence. And this essentially means you don't know what you don't know. So for example, if you go to learn a new skill, let's say you want to learn how to focus. And you know what focus is, you know what paying attention is, you have a general idea of it, but you've never deliberately practiced it. So you probably go in thinking like, oh, this will be easy. Then you go and do some of the practices that are going to help you to develop your focus, to pay more attention, to get into an alpha wave brain state, which is something we can discuss in later videos, the different brainwave states you can be in. Alpha is the one you want to be in when you want to get into a deep state, or deep work, I should say, where you really want to focus. And so you understand that and you're like, this will be simple. And then you do the practices, then you really try and develop the skill, and you realize that, wow, I'm not that good at this. But before you get to that point where you've tried it, you are an unconscious incompetence. For example, I've never played the violin. I have no idea what I don't know. I have no idea how to play it. It doesn't matter what I think about it. I've never played it. I've never thought about playing it. I've never picked one up and consciously tried to learn how to play it. And so I would be in stage 1 when it comes to playing the violin. For some of you, again, like important things like learning how to focus or learn quickly or even make money or different things that are going to be pretty relevant in your life, you're probably at stage 1. Now, it's not bad being at any of these stages. Wherever you are right now is perfect for you, but you do need to be aware of where you're at in order to help you get to the next stage. So, unconscious incompetence. Now, you move from stage 1 to stage 2 very, very simply. It happens like this. So these first 2 stages are where most people are for most things, and it happens like this. So you're unconscious incompetence. So let's then say I pick up the violin, and it's like, all right, I'm ready to learn. Let's go. Let's learn this. How hard is it going to be? And I go, "Rrr." Sorry if that affected you guys on the audio, but I suck at it. Now I suddenly understand how hard it is to play the violin, how hard it is to actually learn a new skill. And so now I'm going to be in conscious incompetence. Okay, so conscious incompetence. So the first one is you don't know what you don't know. I don't know how bad I am at the violin until I pick up and try and play the violin, until I try and learn it. And then once I pick it up, and again, this can apply to any new skill. Violin's just one I chose because that is legitimately something I've never tried, right? So I would be in unconscious incompetence. Even now, I still don't know how bad at the violin I am, even though I would assume, knowing this process, that I'm pretty bad. But then I would move into stage 2, which is conscious incompetence. And I'm also going to tell you right away, this is the stage most people quit. This is the stage where most people turn around and go, I'm not doing it. Because people then become aware of how much they suck at this new skill they're trying to learn. They understand and start getting an idea of what they're going to have to do to get good at this thing. And the fact of the matter is there are way more efficient ways to learn something. You know, there are ways to do it where it doesn't suck as much. There are ways to do it where you move to the third stage much quicker. But again, people aren't aware of this, so they usually just quit at stage 2. And this is an incredibly detrimental thing to do if you're trying to learn something and genuinely want to learn something because of a thing called myelin. And we'll get into that in a second. Just want to give you a little taste. Because the second stage, conscious incompetence, is also one of the most important for 2 reasons. The first reason is because this is where you're going to be offered the most resistance and where most people quit. But it is also the stage with the most potential for growth. There will never be a stage where you can grow more than in conscious incompetence, and this is because of myelin. Now, what myelin does, and I don't know the exact scientific, nomenclature, is that the right word? Jargon to explain it. But essentially, when you're in this stage, you have an opportunity to learn like 5 times faster if you are hit with a wall and you keep going. See, most people get frustrated and they don't allow the opportunity for myelin to come in, which is, again, a process that's going on in your brain as you're making these new connections because you're trying something new. They don't allow myelin to come in, which just strengthens these connections in a much more efficient and faster way. And again, you can look up what myelin is, but it happens the most in this stage. And so let's say I'm trying the violin. Okay, now I know I suck, but I don't give up. I keep going and I keep looking for the most efficient ways to do it. And I'm just going and I'm going, I'm not giving up. And despite my frustration, despite there being a nagging thought to quit, I am just going. Well, when you move through that frustration, you are building more and more myelin, which essentially means you are learning at super fast rates. Nice voice crack there, by the way. If you embrace the suck, so to speak, you are going to learn faster than you can possibly believe. Because guess what? 99% of people, and again, I'm throwing out the stat, but I guarantee it's very close to the actual figure. 99% of people, when going through a new skill, they're kind of coming at it, like, maybe I'll learn this, maybe I won't. They'll get to this stage and they'll quit. They will not get to that point where the myelin can develop, and they'll get into this super learning state where they are just going to grow faster and faster into that skill. And so again, you don't know what you don't know. You're aware of what now you know that you suck. And most important stage. And again, it's not necessarily the most important stage, but I'm saying that because, again, most people quit at this stage, and most people don't understand that this is the stage where you can develop the most myelin, which means you can make the most progress in this stage. Now, once you've spent enough time in conscious incompetence, you've built up the myelin, the neural connections to develop the skill. I'm playing the violin. I haven't given up. I'm approaching it with good energy. I'm getting in the flow when I do it. When the frustration comes, I'm actually getting a little bit excited because I understand myelin is being developed. If you can create the mindset that when you're kind of stuttering and you're not doing so well, and you have this image of a perfect violinist, again, whatever skill, insert it here, perfect violinist, or someone who can focus for hours and get so much done, or whatever skill it is you're trying to develop, if you can look at that and go, I'm just getting closer. I'm developing more myelin right now as I'm making these mistakes. This is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You see, most people look at it as a bad thing. They get frustrated, they get angry, and they allow those emotions to put them more towards the decision to quit. But if you can, again, just reframe the thoughts you're having in this stage to, you know what, this is not a bad thing. I'm just developing more myelin. Actually, this is very exciting. I'm in the super growth stage right now, where I can really, really hone this skill, where I can really grow fast, where I can develop the skill that very few people have, and I'm excited to develop, and I'm now excited to keep going here. If you can then come from that mindset in stage 2, instead of getting angry and frustrated all the time, and if you do get angry and frustrated, just to be able to, transmute that energy into something a little more positive. If you can do that, you are going to grow so quickly in this stage, and you're going to get better and better. You're going to see fast growth, pretty quickly. So that's what you want to be. Now, eventually, you're going to start getting into stage 3, which is another very important stage. And this is also a stage that trips a lot of people up, because you can get to the point where you get a bit of an ego. So now you're getting pretty good. So you're now at conscious competence. Okay, so conscious competence. So conscious competence essentially means the same thing as conscious incompetence, except now you're pretty skilled. So you've worked on this thing for a while, you've put in the work you need to do. I'm doing the violin, I'm doing the practice I need to do. I know nothing about the violin, I don't know what I would actually have to do. But let's say I'm just doing the proper practices, I'm developing the myelin, I'm developing the neural connections I need to learn this skill. I'm sticking with it, I'm not giving up, I have so much energy towards, I want to develop the skill, I'm getting excited. And I get to the point now where I'm pretty good at the violin. I can now consciously look at the music and play a song, and I can play many songs, and I can play different, I don't know if it's chords on the violin. Again, I'm actually not that musical, so I don't know, so don't slate me if you are and you know all the jargon. But the point is, now I know that I'm pretty good. Like, I'm up there, and my ego might go a little crazy. It's like, yeah, look at me, effers. I'm look at me play this violin. I'm playing the S out of this violin. I can't curse in these anymore. But I mean, I could, but that goes away any monetization potential. But I know I'm pretty good. And again, this can trip some people up and stop them from getting to this stage, which is the stage you want to get to. This stage is essentially mastery. But conscious competence is you've developed a decent level of skill in whatever it is. Now, when you're in conscious competence, I want you to understand something before we move on, is there's a reason I put unconscious, conscious, conscious, unconscious. There's a reason those words are used. Now, if you've been watching a lot of my videos on the subconscious mind, things of that nature, you'll understand what these mean. Conscious means aware. You are aware of your skill, but you also need to be very present in order to do the skill. So I have to really focus, be very present when I'm playing the violin. It's not habitual yet. You know, I'm playing the violin, and when I'm really focused, I have the music in front of me, and I'm really going through it, I can do it, and I can do it well, right? I have to really focus. I have to really concentrate. If I get knocked into my autopilot mode, I'm not going to be able to do it. If I'm not really honed in, I'm not going to be able to do it. But if I focus, if I'm aware, if I'm conscious, I can do it very skillfully. Now we move on to the fourth stage. This is the level of mastery. This is where you're trying to get, and if you can get a skill to this level, you have pretty much succeeded in developing a permanent skill, and something that you can become almost world-class at. And again, you know, it's not as simple as this happens like snap, 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 snap. You know, this takes time, but this is the way it's done. And so obviously this last one is unconscious competence. Unconscious competence. So in stage 3, I'm playing the violin. I'm developing a bit of an ego about this. I know that I'm pretty good. I'm conscious of my competence. You know, I have to be really focused when I'm doing it. You know, I got to be, you know, tuned in. If I start to, you know, I can't really do it in my sleep yet. You know, this is not something that I'm so good at that I can just do automatically. Well, once you get into stage 4, unconscious competence, it's pretty much game over. You're essentially at this world-class place where it's almost instinctual. I don't even have to think about it. I don't even need the notes in front of me, you know, to play the music anymore. It's just a part of me now. You know, it is so wired in my brain to be able to play the violin well. I have put in enough repetition to the point where, you know, I could probably make my own songs. I can play things, you know, certain music really, really, really well without even thinking about it, without even looking at the notes. You know, if you want to relate this to sports, for example, if you're a soccer player, you can do certain moves, certain passes. You can shoot the ball in certain ways automatically without even thinking. It's almost instinctual for you. You know, you don't have to like think, I'm going to do this move and I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, or you need to be very aware. It's almost like things seem effortless. If you ever watched an athlete and you saw them do things and you're like, how do they do that like it's effortless? They do it as if it's no trouble at all. And then you see other players who are really struggling. They have to, you know, they're really focused, they're gritting their teeth, and they really, really have to be in this conscious competence stage where, you know, if they switch off for a second, you know, they're going to lose the ball or they're going to lose track of it or whatever. But if you think, again, I'll use the soccer example, if you think of a player like Zidane, you think of a player like a Pirlo. Pirlo is actually a great example. He had such unconscious competence that he was just so smooth on the ball. He knew when someone was on him. He was 3 moves ahead of everybody else because it was so automatic for him to know what to do. And when he needed to do a certain thing, like a certain difficult pass for most players, he did it effortlessly. His body just moved on its own. It was just instinctual. So then you get into the unconscious competence level of the skill. Now, these are the levels. This is how you build permanent skills. This is how you develop amazing skills, and you make them pretty airtight, and you make them to the point where you're going to be one of the best at it. However, the way you go about this is very important. Because again, like I said, a lot of people get stuck in conscious incompetence because they're not aware of myelin, they give up too quickly, or maybe they don't even really want to develop the skill. They kind of dabbled in it and then they saw how much dedication it would take and then they kind of go away. Like for example, I don't really have any interest in learning the violin. It's just not something I'm interested in. I would rather put my time elsewhere. Not that it wouldn't be cool if I could, but that kind of statement, not that it would be cool if I would, you know, it would be kind of cool if I could, it's never going to give me the energy to get to unconscious competence. It's just not. You know, I'll get to a point, I'll get to conscious incompetence and then realize, do I really want to go on this journey? So understand, you need to come in with a certain energy and you need to really determine what are the skills you really want to develop, which ones are going to serve you, because You're not going to have the time to develop every single thing. You can develop a lot of things pretty quickly once you know how to do it. But again, you do need to invest the energy and time into it. So understand, you're not going to then go through this, breeze through this and learn like 16 different instruments and, 7 different languages and all this kind of stuff. And now if that's what you want, I know people who know tons of languages. That takes a lot. And for some of them, they're going to be conscious competence. They haven't quite gotten to that stage. But still, even being at conscious competence is a good place. And it's so long as you don't stop the skill. This is the other dangerous thing about conscious competence, guys, is if you then stop for some reason practicing the skill, you will slide a little bit backwards. Now, you will have created some permanent neural connections. So even if you're at the conscious competence stage, so let's say, again, you play the guitar and you get to conscious competence and you don't play the guitar for a year, it's not going to take as long to get back to that, but you will go back a little. But you have developed permanent neural connections, so you still will have the skill somewhat, and it will be easier to get back to where you were. But just understand you can slide back again if you just stop doing the skill, especially at this point, because it's not subconscious yet. It's not unconscious. It's not automatic. So when you're in this stage, it is very important that you keep going if your goal is to get to here and master the skill. Now, again, how you go through this, how you do this is very important. So we're going to go right here and give you some other key ideas that are going to help you not only know what skills to develop, but also to understand if you don't do these things, things can get a little muddy, a little murky, because understand this, the way you practice something is the way you're going to develop it. So you could go through this stage doing something that doesn't serve you. For example, you might be learning a technique in a certain sport and you want to master it. Let's take football again. Let's take soccer. Let's say you want to master shooting, which is a very important skill. Like if you can, for example, strike a ball cleanly under pressure in different situations, like most of the time, that makes you an incredibly dangerous goal threat if you can put yourself in those right positions, all that kind of stuff. So you might identify as someone who plays in a more advanced position. That's the skill I want to master. But let's say then you learn the skill incorrectly, or that's not that efficient. Let's say you learn how to kick it with your toe, which is a common one in football that coaches very, very early on try and snuff out of young players because it's not a very effective way of shooting the ball. But let's say for whatever reason, that's what you're taught. And you're taught like that's the technique, that's the main technique. You need to kick the ball with your toe. You're going to get really good at kicking the ball with your toe, and you're going to put in the time and get to unconscious competence if you go through this. But now you're just unconsciously competent at a technique that really isn't going to serve you that much in the game. It just isn't, when you could have spent your time on something that would. So we'll go over this right now. And actually, I already said it, so I'll just put it down here. Important thing is right practices. So right practices. Because you can build the permanent skill of doing something incorrectly. Now, it's not that it's incorrect or not, but it might not be as efficient. For example, you look at certain sports again, and you look at how they were played in, say, the 50s, and you look at how they were played now. Most of the time, the players of now, almost every single one of them at the professional level or high level, are much better or seem much better than the ones that were back in the 50s or whenever. Now, it's not that those players in the 50s couldn't be as good, but the methods in which they learned things were different. I'll give you another soccer example. Nutrition and certain physical elements of the game in football and soccer were not considered that important until relatively recently. In England, for example, Arsene Wenger brought a lot of the nutritional side of the game, the sports science side of the game to England, which transformed the game. And so that's why now when you look at footballers, you have these incredibly high-level athletes. They always have been, but they're fitter, they're stronger, their nutrition is under control. And so they're going to be better for that than athletes that were in the era where that wasn't that much emphasis put on it, because now there have been new techniques that are discovered that serve the athlete in being better. And so when you look at, for example, two different time periods, the 50s for soccer and the, let's say, current day, you'll be like, why is there such a gulf in skill here? Why does it seem like the players in the 50s are nowhere near as good as the current ones today? It's not that they couldn't have been. It's just that the skills they were learning at the time were not as effective. The facilities they had, the practices, the training they had just wasn't as effective. It's not that their bodies couldn't have done it. It's not that if they had the same information, they couldn't have done it. They absolutely could have. And it would have been interesting to see players like that how they would have fared with those techniques of today back then. Or if you brought them in today and then gave them that and whatever it was, it would be interesting to see what would happen. But what I believe would happen is they would be as good or better or just develop in the same way as players of today. Because now they would have right practices. Because some of the practices back then just may have not been, people were still figuring things out, so they don't know. 20, 30, 40 years from now, they might look back at this time in the sport and be like, wow, I can't believe they were doing that. That was inefficient. We found a much more efficient way to do it over here. And that will probably happen. It's hard to think now. It probably was hard to think that in the 50s, 60s for certain sports or practices as well. But that's just how it goes for things, especially as they develop and evolve over time. So understand you want the right practices. So if you're practicing certain methods from that era, again, that aren't as efficient as today, well, you'll get good at those. But why would you choose that over something that is proven to be more efficient, if that makes sense? In the same example I gave you with shooting the ball, why would you try and master toe balling it when you could try and master hitting it with your laces, hitting it cleanly with power towards the corners and get really good at that, get to the unconscious competence level of that? The right practice between the two would be that second one, the latter one, because it's going to serve you more. So when you're thinking of right practices, think, which is going to serve me? What are the methods that I can continually practice that are going to get me to the skill, the unconscious competence level of this skill? Which ones are going to serve me the most, right? Again, because you can do anything. Your actions, you can master any number of actions, any number of a skill. But again, if you master one that's more inefficient than another efficient one, then it's not that you've wasted time, but you could have spent your time elsewhere in a more effective way. Another good way of putting this is you're lacking awareness of what works. And it's just slowing down your journey. There's a nice analogy that says, don't climb a mountain only to find out you climbed the wrong mountain. And what that means is if you're just like, okay, I'm gonna go do this, and you don't do any research, you don't have any awareness, you don't go out and look like what is the best practices right now, you don't do your research and expand your awareness, you might climb a mountain that becomes the wrong mountain completely. You shouldn't have focused on that skill, and you'll be at these levels, conscious or unconscious competence, because you're putting in the time. But there was another mountain that if you climb that, you would be so much further along. So make sure right practices. Make sure the people you're learning from, again, are demonstrating those right practices, things of that nature. And if you do that, you will also develop in that way and then have unconscious competence in that skill in a way that serves you. So one thing I've been mentioning, I'll just write it down right here. Repetition is key. And I go over this a lot, but it gets ignored very often. Again, I call it just the shiny object syndrome. When I've been coaching people, when I'm coaching athletes a lot as well, it's the shiny object syndrome, right? It's bulking at the stuff that works and just wanting that new fancy thing, wanting to be able to do that new skill or whatever else it is. And there's nothing wrong with that to an extent, but you have to understand that repetition of the right practices is what's going to make you good at anything, is what's going to make you unconsciously competent at things that are actually going to serve you. Repetition is key of the right practices. And so if you are not using repetition of practices that actually work, and guess what? It can get very simple, the practices that do work. There's usually not 100 different techniques you could do, practices that you could do that all work equally in the same area. No, there are usually some really proven methods in most skills that work more than different methods. And again, this is where the awareness of finding out what those right practices are. For example, you're learning a right practice right now when it comes to developing skills. And again, this is used by high-level people. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look up, what some other people, you can look up like this, due to 4 stages of learning and what other people use. But I guarantee you're going to come across this a few times because it does work. And so you are learning the right practice in developing skills. And I would consider this one of the most fundamental, like in the beginning I said, one of the most important lessons you can learn, because the skill of knowing how to build skills is going to help you actually develop other skills in the right way. Right? You might not be aware of any of this, and you're trying then to be in a stage that you're just not, which is going to hold you back. It's inefficient, right? Not because you couldn't learn to do it in a way that's more inefficient. You could, but instead, why not find the right practice, which is going in this way? It's understanding which stage you're at, having that awareness, and then repetition, learning this, coming back to this video, reviewing your notes, really getting this to the point where it's unconsciously competent, where you're so good at building skills, it's now easier and easier for you to build skills because you understand this at a level now of unconscious competence. See, before I did this video, before you came to this video, if you've never seen this before, you were on the first stage of this, unconscious incompetence, when it came to knowing how to build skill, right? Or you might have known a different method, but maybe it was a little more ineffective. So you'd be probably in this stage. Right now, if this is your first exposure, first time ever putting this into practice, you're at conscious incompetence. Right now, you're like, okay, I'm learning this. I haven't known this. I'm at the stage where I'm probably not that great at this, but I now know. I have the awareness of that. Your camera got cut off there for a second, but let me tell you something. If you've made it this far in the video, I actually believe you're going to make it to these stages, because anyone who's clicked off, who doesn't have the focus, again, which we talked about, to learn this. Again, I've told you that this will be something that can serve you for the rest of your life. Like if you learn this, things are going to become easier. You're going to understand that myelin's created here when you're getting into the frustration stages and be able to flip that. You know, making skills is not going to be, or creating skills is not going to be as frustrating anymore for you if you learn this. This is going to make things easier. This is going to make it so you're learning them faster, more efficiently, learning the right things. But I guarantee you a lot of people, most people have dropped off this video within who knows how long. But if you're still here, you're writing notes, you're really tuned in, trying to learn this. I know you're going to be going up these, I mean, it's down here, but literally up the levels faster and faster. If you're willing to be here right now and absorb this information and actually take it to the point where you're going to learn it, repeating it, using the repetition of the right practice, which is this, in developing skills, repeating it, coming back to this video time and time again, absorbing it to the point where you're at unconscious competence, you're going to be just fine. But I want to first, before we get to this last one, just kind of applaud you for that. Because again, a lot of people aren't going to make it to this stage. They're not going to make it to this point in the video. We're already over 30 minutes. But again, some people will allow this will probably, I assume, be around 45 minutes. You'll know, but I won't because I'm in it. A lot of people will allow inaction of watching something like as simple as a 45-minute video from preventing them from being successful or developing skills or moving forward in life. You know, people would rather watch a Netflix show that's 55 minutes. They'll watch that with no problem. But they won't put the time a lot of times into a video like this, which will teach them something that can be applied in so many different areas of their life and help move that needle forward for them. But because you're here, you actually are someone who is a bit separate from the pack. If you've made it to this point. And that's really good, guys. You know, so definitely feel good about that. Feel good about actually having the motivation and the energy to want to do this and to get to that stage. Because again, I guarantee the majority, and I don't want to call that into existence, but I guarantee quite a few people have gone to some, you know, funny cat video or whatever, like something on the sidebar for entertainment purposes instead of trying to really learn something here. So I applaud you for that. Now, I won't keep you here much longer because I've given you the main kind of meat of this lesson. But let's get into this last one, which is also simple but important to understand, and is master the basics. One thing you'll understand about what we're doing here is, and looking at this board, is on this small little board with four steps and a few other things to just keep in mind, listed out is the way in which you're going to be able to develop skills, things that serve you, things that help you in life, things that can just radically shift your life. It's all just on here. It's basic. This is not complicated. It's very, very simple. You watch this video a few times and you'll at least understand how it works. You watch this video a few times and you'll probably get to the conscious competence point very, very quickly. You could probably get to it within a week or two, to the point where you're getting pretty good at understanding this, where you're applying it to skills you're trying to build. Understand, when it comes to building a lot of skills, it really is just down to this. And again, I can give you an example from something else I've taught a lot, which is football, soccer. A lot of soccer is mastering the basics. A lot of, again, the shiny object syndrome, a lot of players are going off trying to learn these fun things they see. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy doing that thing too. but it should never be getting in the way of trying to master the basics, because if you master the fundamentals of something, that is the bedrock, the foundation that's going to allow you to do those later cooler things. But some people go immediately for those cool things that have taken someone who's doing them, especially at a high level, years upon years upon years of mastering the basics first to be able to do. You know, for example, there are a lot of skill moves in soccer again, and there are some that are more fancy and some that are basic. And if you look at some of the best players, they're usually mastering the basic movements. Like we can look at one of the best players, Lionel Messi. When he's beating players, he's not doing an incredible amount of complex skills. He's usually doing the basics at a masterful level. I mean, he might even be on a stage 5 none of us are aware of, and he's way beyond just mastering the basics. He owns them now. Now you have to ask Messi if you want to work on the basics. Be like, can I borrow these for a bit? And he may or may say yes or no. May or may not say yes or no. Anyway, but master the basics is super important, guys. And so you do not need to make it any more complex than this, because it might be like, well, I could add this in there, and this person gave me this 100-step thing. No, master the basics. Keep coming back to the things that work. Keep coming back to the basics, the right practices, and using repetition to really build those neural connections. Especially, again, guys, stage 2, look up myelin. Myelin, look that up and what it does when you're in this stage. And you'll start to understand that you can develop things a lot faster than you think. And also, you do not need to overcomplicate this process. Really, I've tried to include everything you need just in this video when it comes to this, right? You know, if you just keep repeating this video or applying what I've given you in this video, you will be developing permanent skills faster and faster and faster. You'll be getting to the stage faster and faster and faster. And there might be a few more nuanced things in here, but you will start to become aware of those the more you practice this. But again, I am right now going through a mentorship, which is a very, very powerful one. And again, the person running that comes back to this time and time again. And one trend I've noticed about him, and many other people I've learned so much from that are living the lives they want to live, that are developing incredible skills, doing seemingly superhuman level things that we're all capable of. And one thing I've noticed about the people who are doing that is they teach very, very simple things. They reiterate the simplicity in things. And so with this, don't underestimate the mastering of the basics of whatever one skill you're going for and just how simple all of this is. All right? So I could talk for hours. I want to give you a little bit of space to digest this. And I would very much recommend you come back to this video time and time again. Really absorb this. You know, if you have to listen to it once a day for a week to absorb it, do that. I mean, 1 week to learn something that's going to develop an incredible skill in your life. I mean, really, what is that? It's no time at all. So if you really want to absorb it, make sure you're doing that. You're paying attention. You're taking all of this. You know, you're writing things down of skills you want to develop, what the right practices for those would be, what the basics would be. You know, those go hand in hand. But, you know, make sure you take some action doing this. Make sure you come back so that you get to this stage of learning this. And I'm going to call it a day from here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I love you. I really want you to learn this, but I can't force you to do it. I can only give you the awareness that this exists, and then it's up to you, and I really hope you'll take it on board. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.